Welcome to tonight's mega bloodbath. In the atheist corner tonight, we have J.L. Warren, and then in the theist corner, we have Spacebooties. Be prepared because we'll have a heater tonight with two great debaters. They're discussing the topic, is Christianity true? And so Spacebooties, being the Christian on the plate, the table, whatever, will be saying yes. And J.L. Warren, the atheist, will be saying no. No, Christianity is not true. Now, with this mega bloodbath, we're going to have timed rounds for the intro and the concluding statements, or the closing statements. So there will be 8 minutes on both the intros and the closing statements. Spacebooties is going to be taking the introduction first because he's the affirmative, then JL. Then Spacebooties is going to close first, and then JL will be doing the closing statement second, closing out the debate. There is an hour allotted of time for the debate, so just be aware it's set for an hour. Each super chat, every dollar in super chats adds to the time. I round down if it's an odd number, like 666, $6.66. I'm going to round down for simplicity. But with that being said, it adds up to 60 minutes, just depending on the amount of super chats. $5 gets you a question to panelist. It will interrupt the debate. I'll try to get those in with a reasonable time frame. That's why they add time, so you guys have time to address those. $2 super chats also get displayed on screen. With that being said, the panelists are immune to mutes and kicks during the debate and probably after the debate, so that may change later. After the debate, if y'all want to stick around, we'll pull up some people for an open panel. This is pretty simple. Let's do our best not to take all the time from the other person. Remember, you guys have a shared time pool and you're having an open discussion. So let's try to be considerate of each other. I get sometimes you get heated and you might yell at them or whatever, but let's do our best not to like personally insult and yell over the other person. It's just not a good thing to do, right? Do y'all have any questions, or is this pretty simple?
Yeah.
Cool. I think the audience is prepared. If you'd like to get a super chat question in to start off the open discussion, feel free to. We've actually had one the last couple times. It seems to be a pretty good way to start the open discussion. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and start the timers, or the 8-minute timer for your introduction whenever you're ready, Spacebooties. Just let me know when you're ready, and I'll put you on the screen and start your 8-minute timer for your intro.
Sure. I'm ready now. Thank you, JL. Thank you, Taco. Thank you for everyone listening in. The proposition on the table right now is Christianity true? I expect my opponent here, interlocutor, if you want to say that, is going to probably assume that I'm going to run a tag argument or some sort of pre-sup or whatever. I'm not going to do that. I'm telling you that Christianity is true. And that is not something that, in my opinion, is mutually exclusive with any other truths out there. I believe, even though I'm coming back to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, after spending over a decade as an atheist, that there are truths in all sorts of worldviews and religions and ideologies. There are truths in all of them. When we think about, is Christianity true? I'm not talking about trying to prove that the Christian triune God has all the omnis or something like that, because in my opinion, that would be absurd. I think that anytime we as humans try to apply our logic to God, or we try to define God, we are always going to fail. But what does it mean then when I say Christianity is true? Well, I would point you to, what does life even mean? What do we do with things like, guilt? What do we do with hope? What does it mean? What is this meaning? What do we do with suffering? What do we do with forgiveness? Why should we even strive to forgive? Why should we do any of that? Meaning is not some sort of illusion. God gave us the right to exist. Things like Buddhism, things like Islam, they also strive for God. And that provides meaning to them as well. Even secular humanism, that can provide meaning to you too. You can define your own meaning in life, sure. But none of that, like, it doesn't really fully explain things that the way Christianity does, with the sense of the dichotomy of forgiveness and hope at the same time. It's a pragmatic approach. I believe a lot of Christians do not appropriately follow Christianity, or Jesus Christ, I should say. A lot of people do hold to their religious doctrines, their religious practices, their dogmas, and they pride themselves as being Christian. But Christianity is not about pride in your specific type of religion or your holy book or your interpretation of a verse or a chapter. It is not about pride. In fact, it is more about humility. And that's where Christianity fails. Even though Christianity is true, Christians fail. And that's because we all sin. We all fall short. We all go against God. We all do. We all fail all the time. Even though we have this sensation that we're so knowledgeable, we're so experienced, we're so learned, that we know all these things, that means nothing to God. The foolishness of God is greater than the wisdom of man. And it's more or less that simple. And by living in a way that Jesus Christ wants us to, when we love God and we love our neighbor, that's when we come closer together. Christianity is true, but Christians may be false. And that is simply the way it is. And what do I mean by that? Well, there is transformation within Christianity. If you really are searching for Jesus Christ and you want to love and you want to treat other people the way that you want to be treated, you can have some sort of transformation. Even if you don't necessarily believe in Jesus Christ, in him crucified, I guarantee you, if you love your neighbor as you love or want to love yourself, you will experience a transformation. I have experienced it myself. I know that's not proof of anything. However, Christianity is true, and it is pragmatic, and it tells us some sort of guideline about how to live our lives in a better way than we often do. That's my opening.
Thank you for your opening. Let me go ahead and reset the timer for JL. JL, let me know when you're ready, and I'll start your timer.
Hey, Taco. He was a little under. Do you mind if I use that in case I go a little over?
No, you got 8 minutes.
Oh, come on, man.
Timer's starting now, and I'll update. Well, I forgot to update the bottom of the screen. I'll get the bottom of the screen updated right now. Sorry about that.
So start it when I start speaking?
Yeah, right now. Go.
All right. Thank you to Taco for setting up this debate, and thanks to Space for taking the time to take the positive position. The topic of the debate is Christianity true? And it's a question that can be answered in one of three ways: yes, no, or indeterminate. Now, to determine which of those answers is the most rationally justified, we need to quickly examine what exactly is meant by Christianity being true. Christianity is currently the world's largest Abrahamic monotheistic religion in its core ideology. regardless of denominational identity, focuses on the belief that the God that acts as the central focus of worship exists, that the individual identified as Jesus Christ is literally the Son of God. This individual died as a sacrifice for the sins of humanity, was subsequently resurrected, and that belief in that story is being true is a primary precept for salvation of the human soul after the biological body dies. So from this, we can understand that for the conclusion of is Christianity true, we have to first demonstrate the truth of several premises: that the creating God in question actually exists as a concrete thing external of human minds, that the individual identified in the Bible actually existed, that the individual in question was supernatural in nature, that the individual was summarily executed via crucifixion for his teachings, and that the individual in question actually resurrected. Now, two of those premises are not too difficult to accept as being true, as they remain well within the realm of logical possibility: that such an individual existed and that such an individual was executed for his teachings. Those are often considered historical claims, and many non-believers have no issue with accepting this as most likely to be true. The other three premises, however, are far more difficult, if not impossible, to confirm or demonstrate, and as such are considered theological claims that require an appeal to faith or belief without rational justification: that the individual was supernatural in nature, that the individual resurrected, and arguably the most important, that the God that acts as the center point of focus in worship actually exists. So, in the scope of the question of the debate, does the mere existence of an individual who inspired the character that appears in the Bible and the logical possibility that that individual was summarily executed logically entail that Christianity is true? Certainly not. Thus, we see that in order to hold Christianity as being true, the position requires an appeal to faith. And with that, we've explored so far, we find an answer to the question, is Christianity true? The answer is undeterminable. But there is one more step that we can take: that we can examine the God concept that rests as the central focus of the ideology. For Christianity to be true, that God, as it is specifically defined, must certainly first exist. If the God doesn't exist, then Christianity is false, being no more different than in any other Iron Age myth. And if the God is unfalsifiable, well, that wouldn't be Christianity, and the religion would still be false. And from an internal critique of the God concept of Christianity, we can show that such an entity cannot exist due to a number of logical contradictions. Paradoxes of omnipresence, omniscience, omnipotence, and omniperfection are some of the most popular. Internal critiques such as the logical problem of evil, the Euthyphro dilemma, and the Trinity doctrine also stand as logical defeaters as well, as the numerous contradictions within the biblical account. In the face of these logical issues, we can rationally conclude that the God of Christianity, as defined within the scope of Christianity, does not exist because it cannot exist. And any attempt to argue around these issues will reduce to nothing more than an appeal to magic and mystery, moving the goalpost through the use of proprietary and esoteric definitions or any other number of logical fallacies. So in virtue of the critical methodology, we are able to refine our answer to the debate question, is Christianity true? And the answer is a resounding no. So from this work done, we can see that because the Christian God is defined within the strictest scope of what Christianity cannot exist, then Christianity itself, within its strictest scope, cannot be true. And the God must first necessarily exist for that proposition to be true. And any attempt to redefine any of the concepts here in order to skirt the numerous logical problems will only result in a version of the God that is rendered ultimately unfalsifiable, ostensibly deistic, and would definitionally not be Christianity, no matter how the interlocutor attempts to rebrand it. And even in that case, the claim of truth would still lack any form of rational justification, given that truth is a property of statements that we call facts. And since the God entity cannot be demonstrated to exist independently of mind and context without begging the question, then the surrounding theology is rendered moot, as it would be foundationally built upon that logical fallacy and the fact that faith is not a tool for epistemology, as it is only a tool for personal validation. Thank you again to Taco in Space and to everyone in the live chat.
Is that it?
That's it.
You were worried about 8 minutes, and that was only 3 minutes. Gee, okay. 4 minutes. Good job. Cool. So remember, people, let's start slamming that like button. The goal tonight is to get 50 likes. I've got 50 pieces of clothing on. I'll be removing a piece of clothing for each like we get. So you can just imagine me removing clothing every time the likes build up on there. But with that being said, let's start slamming that like button, and we're going to go ahead and move into the actual debate portion of this. Once again, we've got an hour set. Super chats add a minute to the timer for each dollar, so this could be up to a total of 2 hours. It goes up to 60 additional minutes. Any questions? Are y'all ready to get into this?
Sure.
Perfect. So let's keep this a good, clean fight. Let's try to avoid the low blows. Mega bloodbath engaged.
Okay, so are we doing a rebuttal, or are we just going straight into bloodbath?
Mega bloodbath engage.
Mega bloodbath. All right. So, JL, do you think that your logic can apply to God?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because in order for the concept to be coherent, logic must necessarily apply. If the God itself is an agent that is itself, that itself cannot be something that it is not, then in order to speak about this thing coherently, logic must therefore apply to it so that we can actually assign things to it and do other stuff with the concept. Otherwise, if it's indistinguishable from things that it is not, then we can't speak about it coherently. We can't make statements about it. So logic must necessarily apply, specifically identity, non-contradiction, and excluded middle.
Okay, yeah, the 3 laws of logic. Cool. And in my opinion, God gave us that ability to think of that stuff. If we think of God as the creator, so let's start applying terms. If we think of God as the creator of everything, would you posit that he existed outside of space and time?
It's an incoherent concept.
It isn't incoherent. But
no,
when
given the understanding of what given the understanding of what space-time is and what the universe is, by definition, analytically, it's an incoherent concept.
Exactly. But wouldn't he have to?
No, not necessarily. I mean, technically, it's like you say, wouldn't it have to? No, because we're talking about one set actualizing another set. So, I mean, if we want to dance around the concepts of like pantheism or panentheism and concepts like that, but no, not necessarily. Anything that is logically possible as an internal critique of your worldview, anything that is logically possible that God can actualize in any way that it wants, and its relationship is not dictated to be any necessary way, so it can have whatever relationship it wants with that thing. And plus, we're talking about like mental states where temporality has to exist, the actual like formation of the thought versus to the actualization of the thought. So if you're saying it all happens once simultaneously, then there's no ability to distinguish between the formation of thought and the actualization of thought. Therefore, the law of identity doesn't apply, and the concept becomes incoherent because all you're saying that all things exist simultaneously and they have no distinguishable identities. But these things, in order to be coherent, they have to apply so that we can convey them to other people. So if we're talking about incoherent concepts, there's really no discussion there. But if you want to say that it wanted, if you want to say that it wanted to, if you want to say that it wanted to actualize and therefore it did actualize, you have to acknowledge the temporality between those two states.
And that's why I mentioned in my opening statement that it is not useful for people to try and define God.
That's an appeal to mystery.
In a box.
That's an appeal to mystery, though. At minimum, at minimum, logic has to apply to it.
People try to define God, people fail.
No, at minimum, logic has to apply to it. At minimum.
Why?
Because in order to convey it as a coherent concept, when we're talking about a God, that God has its own identity as separate from anything else in ostensibly what we would call the not God set. So because the God is itself and it cannot not be itself, okay, like for example, the God, you claim the God exists, but it cannot both exist and not exist simultaneously. That would be a logical contradiction. Therefore, if you're saying that it can, then the concept is I'm not finished. Then the concept is incoherent. But if you're saying that it can exist, but it can't not exist simultaneously, automatically you're invoking logic in order to convey the concept of God as being coherent.
But within the realm of this discussion, when did I claim that God exists?
It's entailed. It's logically entailed by your claim that Christianity is true.
Entailed, gotcha.
It is. It's logically entailed by the claim that Christianity is true, because in order for Christianity to be true, that focuses on the character of Christ and the story there, the mythology there. But in order for any of that to be true, it's logically necessitated that the God must exist in order to facilitate those events.
No, what it tells me is that you didn't even listen to my opening statement.
Oh, I did, and I wrote notes, and I took notes. I did, and I took extensive notes on all the mistakes that you made here.
Gotcha. Well, when you say mistakes, you already made one by claiming that I said God exists.
It's logically entailed by your statement. You didn't have to articulate it directly.
You just assume now you're the one presupping.
I'm not presupping. It's logically entailed by the statement that you made. If you make a statement,
what statement did I make?
I'm explaining. You said your statement is Christianity is true, and you made an appeal to Christ. Okay.
I said that Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior. Yes.
Okay. Well, but if you're not okay, so yeah, so that is a concept of Christianity. But in order for that to be true, the God must first necessarily exist. You're assuming that the God does exist to do the thing that you think it's doing. For Christ to be divine, for Christ to be, or the Jesus to be supernatural in nature, that God must first exist in order to facilitate the truth of that story. But if the God doesn't exist, then your story is moot. So naturally, your appeal to the truth of Christianity, as the way you articulated, automatically already has the baked-in assumption that the God does exist.
Yeah, you didn't really listen to the opening statement, but that's
yes,
fine.
I did. I took notes. I took many notes.
I can do a real quick one. I said that Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and we can see through Christianity that people can have transformations in their lives.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. That's irrelevant to the truth.
God. That doesn't
that's irrelevant to the truth.
What is truth in your worldview?
That which corresponds with reality is logically coherent with other truth claims, that which is pragmatically applicable.
Okay, so you only believe in things that you have like proof of? Is that what you're saying?
Things that I have access to, yes.
Access to.
Because belief in a concept, because any potential positive utility of a concept that is held being true does not indicate that the concept in itself is true in external reality. So it just means that the individual believes that a thing is positive, and therefore, however they comport their behavior could result in positive outcomes, but it doesn't say that what they believe is true. You can simply replace the concept of God with unicorn, and as long as you comport yourself in the same way, you'll get the same results. So it doesn't say anything about God existing or about Jesus Christ being divine or being whatever. It's simply saying that what is being posited by the ideology may have some positive social utility, but that doesn't indicate that the ideology in and of itself references anything that exists in reality, like the existence of a God.
Gotcha. Do you think that my claim that Christianity is true, or is Christianity true, and I say yes, do you think that I take that to mean that there are not other truths?
Well, of course, there are other things that are true that Christianity doesn't deal with, but your statement that Christianity is true has a number of premises baked into it. So that's what I was addressing in my intro.
Right. You got your intro based off of what you thought I was going to come to this debate with?
No, I was arguing about Christianity. If you're not arguing for Christianity, which is one of the notes that I took in your intro, that you're not actually arguing for Christianity, you're arguing for this esoteric conceptualization of Christianity based upon the teachings of Christ, which itself is not Christianity. So you're not technically arguing for Christianity. You're just arguing for something that you like. You're taking parts of Christianity that you like the social utility. No, because the religion in of itself has core precepts that undergird the entire scope of the religion.
Okay, so which branch of Christianity do you think is actually Christian?
They're all technically Christian. They just all believe different versions of the same thing.
So I can believe in Jesus Christ,
the core
no, died on the cross and was resurrected without believing in a certain type of Christianity, right?
No, well, that's a core precept, but it was still, even that statement that you just made, the concept of the belief in the existence that the God itself exists is still baked into that. The assumption is still there. The God exists to do the thing. The God exists to impregnate Mary, however it did. We don't need to get into the gorier details of that. But in order for Jesus to be divine, in order for him to resurrect and be supernatural in nature and do all the weird stuff he did in his mythology, the God must first necessarily exist. So when you state that you hold to that particular thing, that's a core precept of Christianity that has the existence of the God baked into it. So if you're arguing, no, there's no that I don't hold it. I don't hold it to be true.
I saw David Blaine.
That's illusion. That's illusion, and it can be mechanistically explained.
Right.
And it doesn't violate. And it doesn't violate the laws of reality.
Isn't true.
It doesn't violate the laws of reality.
Just because he exists in reality.
No, the act in itself, the illusion in itself has a mechanistic explanation that does not violate the laws of reality.
Are you saying that Jesus Christ did not exist in reality?
No, I'm saying that there was no. My position personally, and I don't say everybody holds to this, is that there was an individual that existed. There was an individual that likely existed in Iron Age Palestine that was the inspiration for that character, for the character that appears in the Bible. But the characters also likely had other traits from other historical legends that were kind of added to it to conflate the legend in and of itself. But I do hold that there was an inspiring character. That's very likely to be true. Just like other legendary characters, there are real people that inspired those legends, like Beowulf and King Arthur and Hercules. There were likely real people that did things that inspired the legends that grew from their actions.
So
But
how
it
does that
doesn't
make it any
entail,
less true just because it takes
because it
from
doesn't entail that he was
just because
supernatural
it
in
takes
nature.
from prior history
Because it
to
doesn't
allow
entail,
people to try and adapt to it and believe in it? How does that
because
make
it
it any less
because
true?
it doesn't entail that Christianity is true. Christianity being that the character ostensibly or
No,
definitionally, oh no, hold up. It doesn't entail that Christianity is true, because Christianity is founded upon the notion that this individual was supernatural in nature. Just because there was an inspiring figure in history doesn't mean that the cult that built around him and the legend that built around him was true in any capacity. Okay? In 1,000 years, we may talk about Gandhi like he was some sort of like superhuman, but it doesn't mean that he was. He was just a guy. Okay? The same thing that goes with whatever individual inspired the character of Christ. Not to mention, there's a whole lot of Christian interpolation that came after the fact. So trying to suss out exactly what is accurate about this dude and what is not accurate about this guy the debate still rage in biblical scholarship. But if you want to take just the teachings of the individual as it goes to like social application, like how you interact with other people, that's one thing, but that alone is not Christianity.
So does the Epic of Gilgamesh falsify Christianity?
No, well, no, that's just one. That's just another claim.
So
It's
what's
another
your
myth.
point? You're
It's
making
another
all
myth.
these failing arguments about
Okay,
modal logic,
but
and
no,
you're saying that all of
I'm
these
not.
all these prior things falsify Christianity, and you just agreed.
No, I didn't say that they falsify
Gilgamesh is
Christianity.
one of the best examples that we have for looking towards the prior stories that are intertwined into Christianity does not falsify it. So
but that I can derive like positive social utility from the story of Gilgamesh and his relationship with Enkidu does not mean that Gilgamesh actually existed and killed monsters.
Okay. That's
okay.
Fine.
So, like I said, if you want to argue from the position that there was positive social utility, if you want to argue from the position that there was positive social utility in the teachings of Christ as it comes to like social interactions and whatever, that's fine, but that's not Christianity.
Okay, so you are putting Christianity into a box as an atheist?
No, Christianity put its own self into a box by the way it defines itself. You are not arguing for Christianity. You're arguing for the positive utility of the teachings of one person, which don't reflect the core precepts of the religion.
You are using the set of all Christian religions.
No, I'm using the established underlying precepts of that religion. You are not arguing for those. You're arguing for the positive utility of the teachings of one dude.
Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, you're arguing for the social utility, the positive social utility of the concepts that were presented by one guy. That in and of itself is not the totality of Christianity, which means you are not arguing for Christianity. If you're arguing for Christianity being true, then you have to argue for the God being. If you are arguing for Christianity, if you are arguing for the truth of Christianity, you have to demonstrate how you know that the Jesus character was supernatural in nature.
Apparently, he's not willing to do so as of yet, but I do pray that God will soften your heart.
Can you demonstrate?
Okay, real fast. There is a super chat I do want to get to because and thank you, VLK. That's greatly appreciated. Because objectiveness is this is related to your earlier discussion. Because objectiveness is non-arbitrary and independent of thought, and God being above all and defines things with His will and thought, then wouldn't that make everything subjective due to His opinion? That was to an earlier conversation.
Yes, the answer to that is yes. If the God exists, and by definition nothing exists external of it to act as a point of reference or appeal for logical coherency or mental content, then anything it actualizes in what we call the not God set, anything that is not itself, is completely subjective to it, meaning it's dependent upon its own mind and stances. So there is no in that worldview. In that worldview, it's logically entailed that truth. In that worldview, I'm not done. Space. In that world, in that specific worldview, by virtue of how the God is defined, there technically is only one truth, and it's only a brute fact. The brute fact is that the God exists. Anything that it actualizes external of itself doesn't necessarily have to be any one specific way. There is no thing to determine what an ought is. So whatever is simply is what it decides to be. And so it could be any logically possible way that it is. So technically there is no truth external of the God. There's only one truth, that God exists. Everything else is entirely subjective. And, like in accordance with whatever it wants, nothing must be any one particular way. So go ahead.
And I mean, you brought up in your opening about the omnis and whatever. I'm not totally into the omnis again because I don't like to define God. I did want to say I think we might agree a little bit on objective morality. I'm curious. I'm a moral relativist personally. I'm curious about your moral stance.
Ditto. We've had this conversation.
Yeah.
I'm a moral anti-realism as opposed to moral realism. Yeah.
Gotcha. I just want to take a quick second for any Christians listening out there who claim objective morality through God. How is it objective if we do not have perfect access to it? That makes it subjective in and of itself.
Well, I mean,
but anyway,
you just have to look at the Euthyphro dilemma. The Euthyphro dilemma breaks that down as to either God is not ultimate, and there is an underlying substrate that even God itself definitionally must appeal to or must adhere to in order to make distinctions, or the God is ultimate, there is no underlying substrate beneath it, and therefore or beyond it, and therefore whatever distinctions it makes are completely relative to it, or subjective to it. So mine stance dependent upon the God itself. So it becomes even more problematic when you recognize that there is nothing external to the God to supply ostensibly what would be more like mental content. Like, so when God says, I want to create a human, what is it that is external to God that says like what a human ought to be? Okay. Or like what is even the conceptualization when you're the only thing that exists and you're saying, I'm going to create X. How do you know what is it that supplies the mental content of what X is? And if people wanted to then turn around and apply to it, oh, well, it knows all true propositions already by nature. So it knows what it is simply because it knows what it is. It's an uninformative tautology, and it actually reduces the God to a function that can only do what it knows it's going to do, and it loses its agency and volition, which is how you get to like the pantheism or panentheism concepts. God is just the universe, doing what it does.
Sure. Well, I have, again, we talked about this before. I have a lot of heretical views on God and Jesus Christ, but I did want to ask you a little bit about truth in and of itself. Do you think Christianity has any truth in it, or is it all false?
So as far as like the religion in and of itself goes, the two premises like that I mentioned in my intro, that such an individual likely existed that inspired the character, and that individual was executed for crimes against the state or whatever he was charged with, the numerous charges he was gotten, that he was given. That I could say that the evidence indicates that is most likely the case. But the conclusion from that is that he was just another megalomaniacal, preacher or megalomaniacal rabbi who was preaching like he knew better than everybody else. And so what he was doing was coming off as heretical, and he was summarily executed for that. Now, that's well within the realm of logical possibility. It's the other three premises that are far more difficult and require. That's why they're not historical claims, but theological claims. So there could be some nuggets of truth at the core, like down there at the foundational level, like the dude existed, he said some stuff, people agreed with it, the cult was formed. Sure. I mean, that's totally within the realm of logical possibility. Doesn't entail that God exists, doesn't entail that he was supernatural in nature, doesn't entail that he was resurrected. There are far more better and more probable naturalistic explanations as to what was going on than the ones that are posited in the book.
Right, but you agree that truths can stack, right?
You can have like there can be multiple things that are true. Yeah, it's true that it is possible that it's true. It is possibly true that the due to inspire the character existed, and it is possibly true that he said some of the things that he was recorded as having said. Sure.
Right, but so naturalism and Christianity are not mutually exclusive, right?
I would say they overlap. There are some things that can be explained naturalistically. But when it comes to like the religion in and of itself, it's like naturalism doesn't play to that because it literally founds itself. Its grounding is in the existence of the supernatural.
So would you favor naturalism over Christianity?
I would. It's not a sense of favoring it. It's that I don't have access to the supernatural, so I can't even say what the supernatural is, because the minute we have access to something and we can mechanistically explain it, it's naturalistic in nature. Supernatural is a label that is pretty much given to things that we can't readily explain via our understanding of natural laws. Which right now these days, like here in 2020, like 1,000 years ago, there was supernatural stuff all over the place. But today, we pretty much have this stuff sorted out. And we don't appeal to the supernatural because it's an unnecessary label. No, it's an unnecessary label that doesn't tell us anything.
Sure.
So,
do you have any examples of whether it's ideology or archaeology or a different sort of worldview, God concept, whatever, that specifically falsifies Christianity?
Okay, so like as far as the falsification of Christianity, you have to look at the core precepts, and the number one thing that you can knock it down on is that the God doesn't exist. That the God entity doesn't exist.
Well,
So
that's just a statement.
it's
That
either
doesn't
well, no,
falsify.
no. You can it does in the sense that Christ can't be supernatural if the God of that religion doesn't exist. And so if Christ is not supernatural, then Christianity is false. And you could do that by knocking down the God that Christianity holds to existing by exposing its logical contradictions.
I mean, that's fine. But you're assuming that those logical contradictions, you're assuming that all of those omnis actually apply to God, that all of those
They
laws
do. They have
apply
to.
God. But you are using
No, they do. They have to. They necessarily have to.
Mind to try and apply the things that God gave you to God. You're
no,
like
we're back to the beginning.
And you're trying to rise back up the arms of the fractal and get back to the source.
You've jumped back to the beginning.
Source without faith.
You jump back to the beginning. This is literally an appeal to mystery. The God concept, the God. I'm going to explain. I'm going to explain.
Define God.
It doesn't matter. I can define it.
Atheists and Christians will always fail. It's because you're trying to define God.
I know the God can be defined. The religion itself defines it. That you choose not to define it is irrelevant to the topic at hand. The topic of this debate is Christianity true?
No,
Christianity. I'm not finished. I'm not finished. Christianity as a religion. Christianity as a religion has a specific definition of what the God is. Now, if you want to reject that, say, "Oh, I choose not to." If you want to take a fence-sitting position and not define the God, that is on you. But that's not arguing for Christianity. If you want to do the debate is on the truth of Christianity.
No, I'm saying the debate topic is Christianity true?
Right. The truth of Christianity is Christianity true? That's the scope of the religion. That's the religion in and of itself that is identified as Christianity, which means you have to take the whole thing. You're taking parts out of it. You're taking parts out of it and you're trying to avoid other things. So you're just arguing for the social utility of the teachings of one person. But that's not Christianity. You're also ignoring how Christianity defines the God that is in question, just so you can get around having to deal with the logical entailment, the problematic logical entailments of it. The God itself does not exist. The God itself does not exist.
You simply don't.
The God itself does not exist, and what you're doing is essentially running the God into the area of incoherency by saying that logic doesn't apply to it.
Yes, because God is incoherent. I agree.
Then there's no justification to believe that it is true or that it exists.
That's what it's called, faith, not logic.
Okay, but faith is not a tool for epistemology. Like I said in my intro, it is a tool for personal validation.
Okay, but we're not talking about whether or not God is true. We're talking about whether or not Christianity.
But for Christianity to be true, the God must necessarily be true.
I know you want to shift the goalposts here.
It's not shifting the goalposts. I said it in my intro. For Christianity to be true, the God of Christianity must necessarily exist.
And just over talk me and present yourself like you're really, really smart, and you can't even tell me which Christianity you're talking about.
I'm talking about Christianity. The core precepts.
Which one? Which one?
No, I don't need to reference a specific denomination. All I have to do space. You got to let me finish the thought. Space. You got to let me finish the thought. I'm only referencing the core precepts of Christianity that all denominations and families, East and West, hold to. The God exists. Christ existed, was supernatural in nature, was died by a crucifixion, and was resurrected.
Sure.
That is the core concept. That is the core foundation of Christianity. Sure, that's it. We don't need to go further. We don't need to go further into things in the theology like faith and works or faith alone, or we don't need to go into any of that stuff. We look at the core concepts that all denominations and both East West agree on.
The definition that you just gave were the omnis. Where were they?
Okay, so the omnis are just a way to show that version of the God doesn't exist by virtue of the logical paradoxes, which I have listed out here. Okay,
right.
One way. That's
omnis are there, JL.
There's the omnipotence paradox, the omniscience free will paradox, the perfection paradox, the omniscience agency paradox, the creation paradox.
I'm not asking about paradoxes. I'm asking you how many omnis are there?
There's four. There's omniscience. So technically there's five. There's omnipotence. There's omniscience. There's omniscience, omnipotence, omnibenevolence, omnipresence, and omniperfection.
Can you show me in the Bible where it says that we have to believe that as Christians?
So these are derived. These are derived from statements that are. These are derived from the Bible. That statements are made. These are derived from the Bible in statements that are made as to the extent of. Can you let me finish the thought, please?
Well, as long as you can provide verses at the end of this, sure.
Okay, statements that like God is all loving. Okay, that is understood to be omnibenevolent. Okay, you're literally just arguing semantics here. It's just one word that is used to express the exact same idea as another word.
Trying to use an internal critique for things that you don't.
I am. That the logical problem of evil is a legitimate internal critique.
For the omnis that you're claiming.
The logical problem of evil is a legitimate internal critique.
That's not an omni. I'm asking you.
The logical problem of evil is the logical problem of evil is an the logical problem of evil.
What you're talking about, Jail?
The Epicurean trilemma, aka the Epicurean trilemma, otherwise known as the logical problem of evil, has been around for thousands of years, as articulated by Epicurus or Carneades, and it is in response to the omni God. Sorry, you're cooked on this.
This is what they do.
You're cooked on this.
They do. I'm hooked on phonics.
You're cooked on this because the Epicurean trilemma, otherwise known as the logical problem of evil, has been around for thousands of years and is a direct response to the proposition of an omni God. I do know the Bible.
You can't even give me a single verse.
I don't need to. It's understood.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. It's understood by atheists.
Look up any verse. Look up any verse where it says that God is all loving, that God's knowledge is infinite, that whatever. It doesn't matter. The problem here is that this is a complete deflection. Is that you yourself choose not to define the God. You yourself choose not to define the God, and that's on you. You're not arguing for Christianity. I'm sorry. You're cooked on this.
All you're doing is yapping. All you're doing is yapping and not actually responding to the question that I asked. And now you're saying that I deflected? That's absurd. That's absurd.
No, your reasoning here is absurd.
All right, and real fast, onomatopoeiaphobic says it's a comment, so you don't necessarily have to respond to this, but they say a new densest matter has been discovered in space. They're calling it booties. JL knows this stuff, dude. Listen, maybe. Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, I would love to listen to JL if he could quote a single Bible verse that backs up his omni statements, which he can't because he's an atheist that thinks he knows about Christianity and God and can't quote a single Bible verse about the omnis.
You're wrong on that, but you can ad hom my character all you want. It doesn't make you right.
I asked you multiple times and you wouldn't respond.
So well, I don't need to reference them. It's not
is that either you don't know the Bible or you aren't willing.
I do, but I don't need to pull those sources because it's not germane to the debate at hand.
No, it's absolutely germane.
No, it's not.
Putting Christianity into a box.
No, it's not because I'm not defining Christianity specifically by space. No, you're straw manning me at this point. No, you're straw manning me at this point.
Why do you insist on overtalking me here? Here's the thing, Jail.
Because you're straw manning me, and I'll wait till you get done so I can address how you're straw manning me.
Yeah, well, I would have been done 5 minutes ago if you would shut up so I can get my statement out. But you insist on overtalking, talking really fast, using a lot of big words, and making yourself appear to be smart. Go ahead and search up the Bible verses. While you do that, I will tell you that the foolishness of God is greater than the wisdom of man.
Means nothing. It's completely irrelevant.
Yeah, it means nothing to you as an atheist. I get that.
Because there is no rational justification to believe that the God exists.
That's why it's called faith, dude.
That's why, and faith is not a tool for epistemology.
Why do you think
you've got to let me finish the thought. Space. You got to let me finish the thought. Faith is not a tool for epistemology. It is a tool for personal validation. Your personal validation is irrelevant to what is true.
Why do you think faith exists?
Because people want to believe in shit that makes them feel better, as opposed to harsh realities. Because beautiful lies are more acceptable, in human psychology than harsh truths. That's the reality of it. People would prefer that. You may prefer to believe in beautiful lies, okay, but it doesn't make them true just because you believe in them, just because they provide you some emotional utility. It is because it demonstrably doesn't exist, as I explained.
You didn't even listen to what I said. I said God is often not a beautiful lie.
No, it is because it doesn't exist.
Okay.
As I demonstrated.
Not willing to engage. I think that counts as concession.
Nope. I'm waiting for you to actually. Okay, so it's my turn to ask you questions because this all went off of your question. So it's my turn now. Can you demonstrate that your God exists independently of mind and context without begging the question?
Nope.
Okay, then you have no rational justification to claim that your God is true, or that this God exists, or that anything that stems from it is true. Therefore, it's all just you validating your positions, which means that's an acknowledgement that you failed the debate
about whether God is true, because you are saying that
you can't determine it to be true if you have no rational justification
because of these precepts that you have defined. I'm not going to.
Sorry, you can't claim it to be true if you have no rational justification for the claim.
Just because an atheist that sounds smart and does a lot of debates says that, oh, Christianity entails.
This is completely irrelevant. This is completely irrelevant to the conversation at hand.
Christianity is false.
You're crashing out, dude.
Absurd.
Calm down.
And now you have shifted the goalposts every single time.
It's not shifting the goalposts. I've stayed well within my intro.
What is God and the problems with God?
Yes, because for Christianity, yes, because within the scope of the debate, for Christianity to be true, that God must necessarily exist.
Christianity is true. You want to talk about God instead of Christianity?
I am, because for Christianity to be true, which is the topic of the debate, the God must necessarily exist.
Disingenuous. You are always this disingenuous liar.
Chat, what is it? What is it doing? What is it doing, chat?
Please say what you think. I mean, I'm sure you.
What is it doing? What is it doing, chat?
Perhaps you're thinking too much.
Okay, so for Christianity, the religion to be true, the God must necessarily exist. If the God doesn't exist, Christianity is not true. Done. As I explained in my intro.
All right.
Go ahead, Taco.
And there's a couple super chats. Nobody on fire says, John. I'll read the first one first. Eris wanted to mute Spacebooties. I appreciate that. However, in the mega bloodbath, there's no super chat mutes like normal. I apologize. I did update the Streamlab so that doesn't display that message anymore. And then nobody on fire said John 1:4:8. Whoever does not love does not know God, for God is love. God is love equals he is a perfect representation of love. Thank you so much for the super chat as well.
So ultimately, if you can't demonstrate that the thing exists, independent of mind and context, to do the things you think it does without begging the question, you have no rational justification to claim that it exists. Therefore, if you can't demonstrate that it does, then you can't demonstrate that the proposition that it does is true, which means that anything that stems from that, like the existence of Christ, being divine, being the Son of God, being that it was that the individual was supernatural in nature, that the individual performed miracles, that the individual was crucified and then summarily resurrected 3 days later, and that he is the Lord and Savior or whatever, none of that stuff is logically entailed if the God itself doesn't exist. The God must first necessarily exist because it's all predicated upon that one position. So if you knock out the foundational position, none of the rest of it, all the rest of it goes with it. It's very simple logic. So logic must necessarily apply to this in order to convey these things coherently. Otherwise, what are we talking about? You can say the God, by saying the God exists, you automatically invoke the laws of logic, that it is itself and is not what it is not, that we are talking about that as opposed to talking about something else. Okay, so that's the problem. So that logic must adhere to it because you're invoking them the minute you say that the thing exists. So now we can look at that. What are the logical entailments of its existence? How is it defined? I'm not choosing to define God any one specific way, but Christianity does. Now, there are different ways that Christianity does it. You could say that it's omni. You could say that it's maximal. You could go in a number of different directions, but it doesn't matter because there are responses to the omni arguments. There's responses to the maximal arguments. There's responses to the perfection argument, responses to the creation argument. Which I have all listed here. All of those are logical defeaters for how that God is defined. Your only option now is to redefine the God into what you are technically doing, which is deism, which is a deistic notion. What you're doing is what I indicated in my intro. You are redefining the God into deism so that you don't have to argue for it, and so you don't have to argue for it because it's ostensibly unfalsifiable. Therefore, no, because I'm not done. Because I'm not done. Yes, and so
I do need to say the audience, I'm going to keep moderation minimal as I always do in the mega bloodbaths, but it is impossible to understand either of you when you're over talking each other. So
yeah, I got to finish my thought.
One of you is going to have to allow the other to talk when one of you is making a point.
So to finish my thought, you refuse to define your God in any particular way, which basically means that you are relegating it to a deistic concept, that there's no way to define it or no like whatever, but it still does exist. Therefore, the laws of logic still apply to it and can be applied in a logical entailment capacity. but you refuse to define it, which relegates it to deism, which logically entails that it is unfalsifiable by nature, and so therefore there's still no rational justification to believe that it exists, or to make the claim that anything you're deriving from it is true. So you're still not arguing for Christianity. You're arguing for your esoteric conceptualization of what should be surrounded, the theology that should surround the teachings of one guy in Iron Age Palestine, which is not Christianity.
Just let me know. Okay, cool. Again, you are shifting the goalposts away from Christianity to the definitions. Oh, are you gonna rant again?
No, I'm just gonna laugh at you. No, I'm just gonna laugh at you because that's objectively funny what you just said.
Yep, exactly. I can't finish, but
it's objectively funny what you just said.
5 or 10 minutes, you can go on, but I can't.
I didn't go on for 5 or 10 minutes. I went on for like 3.
Please keep interrupting. Go ahead.
That's okay. You got nothing. I mean, what you said was objectively hilarious, that I'm shifting the goalposts of Christianity when I literally in my intro wrote out what exactly are the core precepts of Christianity that all denominations accept.
Taco, I can't have a debate if I can't talk.
You can just like say something substantive, like demonstrate that your God exists, demonstrate how you use epistemology to get to your Christ figure, your Jeebus character being supernatural in nature. If you can't do that, you lack rational justification. If you have no rational justification, you can't make the claim that it is true, because it's just you personally validating your emotions instead of actually demonstrating what is true about external reality. Done.
Cool, man. Am I allowed to go now? Or do you want to go on for another 5 minutes?
I mean, you can whinge about the meta all you want. You're cooked on this.
You haven't listened to a single thing I've said because all you want to do is spurg.
I have. All I've heard you do is not argue for Christianity, which is the topic of the debate. Is Christianity true? You're not arguing for Christianity. I'm trying to keep you back on track.
Apparently, since I can't talk.
I'm trying to get you back on track to argue about Christianity, which entails that the God exists.
I'm not able to argue for anything right now, dude.
That's on you. If you don't want to argue for Christianity, then I mean, really, you can concede all day long. We can talk about something else.
Sure it's not on me, but
it is. You're not arguing for Christianity by definition. Definitionally, you're not arguing for Christianity.
I'm not arguing for anything at the moment because you keep spurging.
It's not spurging out. I'm pointing out the fact that you are not arguing for Christianity, which is the topic of the debate.
Keep in mind, it is a negative point hitting on meta instead of the discussion.
You're arguing.
Yeah, I can't have a discussion, Taco.
You're arguing about something, like I said, some esoteric philosophy.
JL or not.
You're just talking about some esoteric philosophy based upon the teachings of one dude that takes none of the other like necessary shit into account for Christianity. You're not taking it all. I mean, literally, you have to address the God. For Christianity to be true, the God must exist. That's the core foundation. If the God doesn't exist, then Christianity can't be true. Done.
Hilarious. Good job. You win. Do you think God is a actual like mathematical problem to be solved? You think that's what God is in your mind?
No.
God has to be proven. Otherwise, you can't believe in it. Do you believe? Do
you want me to answer that question? The second question, or which question do you want me to ask? Or which question do you want me to answer? Which question do you want me to answer? You've asked me 4.
Apparently, you can't even listen to it.
No, you've asked me 4 questions. You've asked me 4 questions. Which one do you want me to answer?
I don't know any of them, but you can't even get one.
Then just ask a question and I'll answer it. Space, come on.
All you want to do is spurg about how I'm wrong.
No, Space. You asked me, Space. You asked me 4 successive questions. Space. You asked me 4 successive questions. Which one do you want an answer to?
Bloodbath and prove that you were the smart atheist here.
Space, stop whinging about the meta. Space, stop whinging about the meta. You asked me 4 questions. You asked me 4 different questions in succession.
I'm trying to address.
You asked me 4 different questions in succession. Which one do you want me to answer?
Holy shit. Shut the fuck up.
You asked me 4 different questions in succession. Which one do you want me to answer?
Do you think God is a logic problem to be solved?
Okay. No, but it can be defeated utilizing logic.
How?
Depending upon how the God itself is being defined It can be either eliminated via logical contradiction, or it can
getting
either
it.
be eliminated via logical. It can. You got to let me finish, dude.
And
It can either be eliminated.
Jesus Christ loves
It can
you.
either be eliminated
And
via
I
logical
hope you
contradiction, or it
have
can
the
be shown to be
chance to come back to our
unfalsifiable
Lord
and
and
therefore
Savior
not
Jesus
rationally
Christ.
justified to believe
And I
exists.
will tell you that Christianity is true because Jesus Christ is true.
Okay, but for Jesus Christ to be true, that God must first necessarily exist, which is why I'm going for the underlying concept that undermines your entire core philosophy.
Why does God have to be true for Jesus Christ to be true?
Because Jesus Christ is definitionally, within the scope of Christianity, the Son of God.
He more often refers to himself as the Son of Man, right?
Definitionally, the Son of God.
No, he more often refers to himself in the Bible as the Son of Man.
Definitionally, the Son of God.
You are attacking a faith and a religion that you don't even know how to quote or
definitionally, the Son of God.
You are going off of things that you read off TikTok and YouTube, dude.
No, I'm not. This is hilarious. How much meta are you going to throw around here? Do you have anything substantive to bring to the table?
I would try, but
because this is just meta whinging. Okay, so you asked me four successive questions, and I haven't answered like any of them because you won't let me answer them. So what question do you have? Do you have another question, or are you just going to concede that you have no rational justification to claim that Christianity is true because you can't demonstrate that the God exists, and therefore because it doesn't exist, therefore Christianity as literally a core concept like a religion cannot be true because the God itself cannot exist. The utility of the philosophy means nothing. Okay, it doesn't indicate that Jesus was supernatural. It doesn't indicate that the God exists. Sure, there are many, many different ideologies presented throughout human history that could have positive social utility. They can also have negative social utility. So, but for the faith itself, for Christianity to be true, the God must exist.
2.3 billion Christians around the world. Do you think it means nothing to them?
Sure, it can mean something to them. I don't give a shit that it does. It's irrelevant whether or not it means something to them. The question is it true? The positive utility is irrelevant. In an analogy, there's an analogy for this. If I happen to be a believer and I get into a car accident, okay, and I'm trapped in the car, and so while I'm trapped in the car and the first responders are working on me, I take the time and I pray to the God that I think, but that I'm convinced exists. And the act of prayer calms me down, lowers my blood pressure, and ensures that I don't panic and inadvertently hurt myself further, which then buys the first responders time to cut me out of the car and the paramedics to save my life. The question then becomes, does the act of the positive utility of the act of prayer indicate that God exists? No, it doesn't. It indicates that the physiological response to the act was positive, but it doesn't indicate that the God exists for the prayer to be effective. Okay? I engage in a philosophical thing, and I engage in a physiological behavior that I justified engaging in by virtue of a concept that I believe in. But that doesn't mean that the concept is true. It just means it has positive physiological utility, or it could have emotional utility, or psychological utility. Doesn't mean that God exists. That's not logically entailed. It's a non sequitur. So
apparently, we're not going to get anywhere because we disagree on what Christianity entails.
Okay, and VLK says, Space, do us a favor and stop whining. List your beliefs on your God, arguments, assertions, whatever. Just do something. Ignore the first part of that. I think the back half of that is a good point. Maybe find a good neutral ground here, and then I'm going to put a couple smaller super chats on the screen.
I mean, go ahead. You can do the other super chats. It's fine.
Oh, no. The $2 get displayed, so I'm just displaying them.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, ultimately, if you're done, if you got nothing to present, we can move to closing. I mean, you can concede it and just move to closing. But the debate is about is Christianity true? There's no ambiguity in that statement. Christianity is the religion. The religion has core precepts. If those core precepts are not true or are unfalsifiable, you cannot say with any rational justification that Christianity is true. Predominantly, the most important one is that the God that it's predicated upon exists. This is why theology in and of itself is ultimately irrelevant, because the theology is baked around the nature of the God. That's what theology is, the study of the nature of God. And so if the God can be demonstrated to not exist, then any theology that's built up around it is irrelevant. So we can just throw it out by looking at the God concept, because it all hinges upon that.
According to you, and again, apparently we cannot move forward because you want to push your is Christianity true to the God claim, and you wouldn't engage with my arguments otherwise because that's all you want to focus on, and that's fine. But
no, I did. I addressed them. Their appeals to utility.
You are not willing to engage in any discussion, so I guess we move to closing.
No, I did. You appealed to mystery. You appealed to mystery. You appealed to utility, personal utility, and you appealed to emotion. That's all you did. That's how you backed up your position. Appeal to utility, personal utility, appeal to emotion, or appeal to consequences, and appeal to mystery. That's it. And so technically, you're also begging the question because you're assuming that the thing exists to do the thing that you think it's doing in order for Christianity to be true. But then again, you're not really arguing for Christianity. You made it very clear in your intro that you weren't arguing for Christianity. You're arguing for some esoteric version of, like, philosophical version that you are labeling Christianity, but is not Christianity by definition.
You couldn't tell me which Christianity you're talking about.
I did. I don't need to invoke a specific denomination.
You realize that different denominations have different views of God and Jesus.
The extending ideas, but the core precepts are all the same.
The core precepts. Do you want to talk about Trinitarian versus Unitarian religions? Do you want to talk about witnesses that don't view Jesus Christ as an actual God? Do you want to talk about any other type of Christianity that doesn't fit your predefined view of what Christianity specifically is?
It's irrelevant because all of them believe that God exists.
The Christianities that don't fit your world,
because all of them believe that God exists. Done.
Absolutely.
All of them hinge on the God existing.
There is a super chat that I think will tie this all together quite well. So, Space, who is Jesus's dad? And thank you for the super chat.
Jesus.
So your response is Jesus is Jesus's dad?
I'm my own grandpa. So, but all of them, every single one of them, believe that the God exists. It hinges upon the existence of the God. If the God doesn't exist, then the theology is irrelevant. The denominational differences are irrelevant because all of them, the entire body of it, hinges on one proposition: does the God exist?
So let me ask you this, Jill. What do you think about the square root of -1? Does that exist?
Irrationally. I mean, we're talking about abstract concepts here.
Exactly.
What about them?
So what do you think about complex numbers?
Are we just invoking abstraction?
I'm trying to lead you down a path.
Are we invoking abstracta? Is that what we're doing here? Because that's the same answer to the question that you just asked me. Abstracta. They're all abstracta. They're mental conceptualizations.
Okay, well,
they don't exist in reality. They're mental conceptualizations.
Complex numbers don't exist in reality?
Not in like any kind of like platonic sense. No, they don't exist. They're abstractions that we have invented to apply to things in reality in order to quantify them.
Right, but so the square root of -1 cannot exist in our reality, correct?
It exists as an abstraction. It's an abstract concept.
It exists as a thing in our reality, right? It cannot exist as a being or an identity in our reality.
I don't hold to Platonism, and there's no justification for holding to Platonism. So unless you're a Platonist, then
I'm just asking you: can we present anything that represents the square root of -1, except for like
an abstract concept? That's what it is. It's presented as an abstract concept. That is definitionally what it is.
Right. And complex numbers are useful, right?
Yes, they have utility as abstract concepts in quantifying reality.
Right. And so
descriptively,
the square root of -1 is involved in every single complex number, definitionally, and complex numbers are useful in day-to-day life.
Right.
Doesn't that mean that God has, even though it's an abstract, irrational concept, that it's still applicable and useful in daily life?
But like I said in my intro, the utility of the concept does not indicate that the concept exists in reality.
But you are saying Christianity is false because God is irrational, right?
No, I'm saying Christianity is false because the God doesn't exist
in our reality.
In any reality, it does not exist at all because logical contradictions cannot exist.
You have knowledge of other realities?
Because logical contradictions cannot exist
in other realities.
Logical contradictions cannot
Do you have knowledge
exist.
of all realities?
Logical contradictions cannot exist. Done. There's no more to add to that statement.
Okay, so apparently JL knows all knowledge. He is the omni being.
No, modally, I can say that logical contradictions cannot exist.
All realities and all of his.
This is just whinging about the meta. This is just whinging about the way. This is just you whinging about the meta. If you don't understand what logical contradictions are and how they cannot exist in any possible world, that's on you. But logical contradictions cannot exist.
I didn't even get to the third part.
Doesn't matter. You're appealing to abstract concepts. I've already conceded that an abstract concept can have positive utility, but it doesn't indicate that the abstract concept exists as a concrete thing in reality, which for Christianity to be, which in the scope of the debate, for Christianity to be true, which in the concept of the debate, for Christianity to be true, that God must necessarily exist in external reality. Therefore, my conclusion.
And abstract and doesn't exist in our reality, he is still useful and applicable in our daily lives. And also, Jesus equals 0 because he's the grounding,
which doesn't indicate anything true about external reality. So you still are not justified in making the claim.
External reality. Interesting.
Yeah, that the God must necessarily exist in external reality for Christianity to be true. If it only exists as an abstract concept, then Christianity is not true. No, if you are conceding that the God is only an abstracta that exists in people's minds, that they apply to certain things in order to derive some sort of positive emotional, psychological utility, that's not Christianity.
Anyone in the last 2,000 years that has actually witnessed God or Jesus Christ?
Ask again.
I mean, I've had an experience which I attribute to Jesus Christ, but that doesn't mean I witnessed God or Jesus Christ.
Right. I can challenge each one piecemeal. I'd have to hear what the experience was, and I can challenge how they're interpreting it.
Doesn't really matter what the experience was. What I'm saying is that, yes, God is irrational and doesn't exist in our reality. However, God is still useful and applicable in our daily lives, and Jesus Christ equals 0 because Jesus is the grounding. He is at the center of the axis.
You just conceded the debate, right? With that statement, you just conceded the debate.
Which one?
The entire debate with the statement that God is irrational and God doesn't exist in reality. Therefore, I'm appealing only to the philosophical concepts surrounding Jesus that he espoused.
That doesn't mean Christianity isn't true.
That does mean Christianity is false.
Because you want God to exist.
It's logically entailed. It's logically entailed. Your esoteric version of Christianity, is irrelevant here. Your esoteric version of Christianity is irrelevant here.
You're at the forefront that
I said at the very beginning. I took in my notes.
This is always.
I took in my notes. You are not arguing for Christianity. Appealing to pragmatism does not entail truth. Problem of hermeneutics, exegesis, appeal to faith, not epistemology. Advocation for mental slavery. Calling Christianity true because things happen to be true. That's literally just appeal to utility. I noted everything you said in this thing, man. You didn't argue for Christianity at all in any scope of it. You argued for some esoteric philosophy that you would prefer to hold to so that you don't have to acknowledge the logical problems of the faith. You basically did what Jefferson did. You cut out all the problematic shit and you kept all the stuff that you think works.
Isn't that what almost every Christian does?
They could, but that doesn't indicate that they're talking about Christianity. They're just an esoteric version of, or some proprietary version of it. I talked about Christianity as it is understood as a religion. The core fundamental concepts that every single denomination, every single facet of Eastern philosophy, all of the theology hinges on. Those 5 premises that it all hinges upon. And the 4 premises hinge on one premise, that the God exists. You silver bullet the initial core premise, the entire thing falls apart. It's a house of cards, which is what I did in my intro.
Religion is a house of cards. I agree with that.
So that's it. I mean, it's not true, demonstrably.
So is Christianity a religion?
Yes, definitionally. It is the largest Abrahamic monotheistic religion, as I stated in my intro.
Gotcha. Yes, 2.3 billion Christians around the world are all wrong.
Yes, they can be. There's no logical contradiction there.
They believe in something false.
Yes, they can. They could. There's no logical contradiction there.
Utility doesn't matter at all.
Correct. Not when it comes to not when it comes to dictating what is true or determining what is true about external reality.
And you can't provide anything that negates Christianity, right?
I already did. The God doesn't exist.
No, that is not. Again, you did the same thing about the archaeological digs in Jericho. You did the same exact thing. You are using that because we have no evidence, because we have no proof. Therefore, it doesn't exist.
No. I didn't point to a lack of evidence.
You are being
no. You're strawmanning me. You're strawmanning me. I didn't point to a lack of evidence.
I really don't appreciate.
No, you're strawmanning me. I didn't. You're strawmanning me. You're strawmanning me. I didn't point to a lack of evidence. I pointed to the logical contradiction.
Gotcha.
I didn't point to a lack of evidence. I pointed to a logical contradiction that's entailed by the concept.
Well, if you ever want to do this debate again and actually be honest about it, hit me up.
I'll take that. I'll take that. Yeah, cool. I'll take that concession.
So is this a concession, Spacebooties?
Yeah, sure. Call it a concession.
Oh shit! We have our first mega bloodbath concession. VLK did submit a super chat. When Jesus said many times he'd come before his generation would pass, most of them wouldn't experience death. There was no need to bear children. What did he mean? Because that's important for Christianity. Do you have an answer for that?
Who's that question to?
Looks like to you.
Yeah, it's to you.
That sounds like a lot of oral tradition that was made to fit within other previous texts and prophecies and stuff like that. I have no idea whether or not it's true. Okay.
Gotcha. So for the concession, I think that means we just go into JL's concluding remarks.
Cool.
Because he is now the victor of the bloodbath. We don't even need to take a vote. So JL, and then we'll move into the open panel, I guess, directly after this.
Cool.
JL, please provide your closing remarks on your victory in this bloodbath, and then after you finish, provide me with a Bible verse for your victory.
Oh, give me 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. I want to make sure I get it right. Yeah, okay, I've got it. So let me do my outro and I'll give you the Bible verse. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Thanks again to Taco in Space. As we can see, there's simply no way around the logical defeaters for the Christian God as defined within the scope of Christianity, and all attempts to circumvent those issues merely results in a rebranding of the Christian God into deism or possibly even pantheism, and a tacit, albeit silent, acknowledgement that Christianity is false. Until any God entity can be demonstrated to exist without begging the question and the mechanistic relationship between it and what would ostensibly be the not God set, then any claim of truth as to these concepts would be indeterminate, thus lacking any rational justification to be held as being true. We must remember that the utility of an abstract concept does not logically entail that the concept exists in external reality, and we must also remember that at any of its potential social utility does not require belief in a God in order to accomplish it. In fact, that it is possible to promote such social utility sans any belief in the promise of a heaven or the threat of hell, but solely with the intent of accomplishing goals demonstrated to benefit society, is not only the more intellectually honest and empathetic position, it would arguably be the most moral position as well. So thank you again to Taco. Thank you to the interlocutor, and thank you so much to the live chat. You guys have been awesome.
Perfect. And what Bible verse would you like?
I want to hear you say Ezekiel 23:20.
Oh, I love that one.
All right. This is the two sisters that fool around. Ezekiel 23:20. Obadiah, she stay hot up for her Egypt guys. They a private part stay big, j like the donkeys, and the sperm they shoot j like from the horses. Basically.
And people want the Bible taught in schools.
All right, so we have an official winner of tonight's mega bloodbath. So
congratulations,
this is the first
JL.
time that we've had a concession in a mega bloodbath. So I hope you guys are excited because this has definitely been an exciting mega bloodbath.